Okay, so I will start with a few words and a few slides. Some of them you may have seen this morning, but it's in a bit of a different perspective. What I first want, I will sit down for the moment. What I first want to do is tell you a little bit about my own career and the things I did, so to explain how this came together. And it's a bit of an atypical path. So it is not a path that many of you would probably follow, because it was also in the Netherlands quite atypical. So I did my bachelor and master degree in the Netherlands in the University of Leiden. And then with my last internship, so in Leiden we have to do about 2 years of internship in different positions. So you get a lot of hands-on experience there. And in the last year, so my last internship was at TNO, and TNO is the Dutch organization of scientific research. So it's a research institution. It's not a university, but it's also not a company. It's doing research for companies, and it's not state-owned. It's a private organization, but it's funded by law. So it's a bit of a, yeah, it's not in many countries they have this, but there are similar things in Scandinavian countries, like in Finland you have VTT, in Austria you have ATSIP. So it's a research organization. And while I was in that research organization, and we are talking about 1985, so a long time ago, I mean about 40 years ago. In that time, the area that I've worked on all my life is on fungi. At that time, there were no genetic systems, no transformation, no genomes of fungi known, so we had to develop everything. And we got a lot of support from the government and from consortia of industries that had interest in working with fungi. So there were already companies like DSM, like other companies, that Novozymes from Denmark, which had interest in producing enzymes in fungi, but there were no systems to do. They had their original strains that produced some enzyme, but they have no opportunity to make other enzymes in these strains. So that is the field that we developed together with teams all over the world, and that was in a very collaborative effort, because we knew we had to collaborate, and we knew we had to use the brain power of lots of people, because we had to develop something new. And that's what I remember from that time. It was because we had to collaborate, so there was little competition. I mean, there was competition in the sense that everybody wants to be the first to do the transformation of X, Y, or Z, but there were very little of that technology was patented, so everybody was free to use it. So, okay, so that was the scenery. So, and when I was at TNO, I worked on several areas of research, gene transformation of fungi. And so during my position at TNO, I was able to publish papers, because that's the other thing. I mean, we published also because we wanted to share this with other people, because that's the purpose of publishing is, of course, you could say, yeah, I have to do it because I have to fill my thesis. But the purpose of publishing is, of course, actually is share your results so that other people can benefit from it. So you don't publish for your own sake, because you know already what you're going to publish. You publish for the sake of others. So again, that is a sharing attitude that was there. And so, having a number of publications, I was given the opportunity to do my PhD, to do my defense. So I didn't have a PhD position, I had a permanent position, but there was a person at TNO who had a professorship at the University of Amsterdam. So I did my PhD at the University of Amsterdam on transformation and gene expression in fungi. Then after that, so when I said I had a permanent position, so after that, my job continued at TNO, and I was project leader, and you name it. And then in 2015, so 30 years after I started at TNO. I did my PhD in 92, so 1992. So that's 8 years after I started with TNO. So I also didn't have the pressure of finishing my PhD in 3 or 4 years, but also not, of course, the opportunity to work full time on my PhD. So there were good parts and bad parts on that respect. And so then in 2015, situation in TNO has changed. TNO was given the purpose of TNO was to do research for the future. But biotechnology was so much becoming research of now, so it was so established that it became more and more difficult to get projects within TNO, because TNO could not do research for only one party. It could not do really commercial research. It had to do sharing research, and that became more and more complicated. And so that's why in 2015 we were given the opportunity, two colleagues and myself, to spin out a company. So we bought part of the technology under very favorable conditions to start our own company. Then that company was called Dutch DNA. And Dutch DNA was focused completely on only fungi, because TNO did all kinds of things. But so similar to what I told you this morning, Ginkgo also did all kinds of fields. That's the same with TNO. But Dutch DNA, we only focused on fungal research. And we had this company, so I said we bought the technology and the strains and everything from TNO. And then we were a contract research organization. We really performed research for companies with their strain or with strains from ourselves. And then after about 5 years or so 2021 or 2020, we came to a situation that we would really need to have new investments. We had to invest in being able to do our own research, not directly for customers, but to develop the system. We didn't have that money ourselves. So then we were looking for funding opportunities. So we looked for partners, different companies we approached and say, well, can you invest in us for 1 or 2 projects per year so that we know we have some funding available? Well, that was not successful. We also were not successful to get money by venture capital. But then we came into contact with Ginkgo and we talked about a partnership, and they were quite interested in that because at that time they didn't have fungi. And then we were starting discussions, and then at a certain point they said, well, we don't actually want to fund you, but we want to own you. So is there an opportunity that we would buy the whole company? And then, well, of course, we were a bit surprised. We didn't think about that before. But then the 3 of us, we came together and said, well, what's the good thing? What's the bad thing? And then we decided to do that, so to be acquired by Ginkgo. And so in 2021, we became part of Ginkgo with our own research group in the Netherlands. And that is more or less where the story on the slides starts. And I will go over it pretty quickly because it will show different things. Because in the time of TNO, we published a lot. In the time of Dutch DNA, we also had a few PhD students that worked with us to develop projects, because maybe sounds strange, but PhD students are pretty cheap compared to full employees. So we had PhD students to really do development work for us. And and we published in that time, we published some work. But in the time of Ginkgo, we haven't published anything because Ginkgo is much more restrictive in publishing, which, well, there's a good side and a bad side in that again, because, I mean, it's all about sharing. And in the US system, sharing is more difficult than in the European system. In the European system, you're used to share with other groups. You're used to collaborate with other research groups. And that's not so common in the US. But anyway, maybe next slide. So the company Dutch DNA, this was the company Dutch DNA. What's the best? So it was based on this research at TNO. Fungal biotech completely. We had a very good publication track record. So in those 30 years, I published about 100 papers about fungi. We had 21 persons, a lot of them, 1/3 had their PhDs. And what we did is, and that's why it's in the center, we developed fungal protein production systems. That was it. We focused on that. So if somebody come to us and say, could you do PICIA? We said, well, we are not the best to do that, so you better go somewhere else. I was also appointed part-time professor at the University of Leiden. That was in 2008. So before already at the time of TNO, but we kept that position when I was at my own company. So this was the basis of the company. Next slide. And so the pillars for our R&D were fungi. So fungal hosts and the toolbox to do. I won't go into the details. I mean, it's not I don't want to give a lecture. It's just to set the scenery. So we mainly worked on fungal hosts like Aspergillus. We did gene expression, protein secretion, fermentation. Next slide. And the strains we were using were strains that were really capable of producing large amounts of protein. So on the left-hand side, you see the wild-type strain. It produces a range of proteins, mainly amylases. And then we made strains that were no longer producing these amylases, so we deleted genes. And then that's what you see on the left-hand side. You see a wild-type producing a GMO protein, that's in this case a cyanase. And you see a strain with the empty background producing the cyanase. And what you see now is that, well, you can see it, the one with the E, it produces almost exclusively this new protein. And that's what people want. They want pure protein as much as possible. Next slide. So our mission, every company has some sort of a mission, and we try to put it on paper, is to unlock the potential of fungi in collaboration with our partners. So companies came to us, they had their own fungus in many cases, they want to improve that fungus, and we help them doing that. So it's all about partnership. Next slide. So we had, I mentioned it already, we had close ties with the fundamental research, so with the university in Leiden. We were located at the Utrecht Science Park. I had my position at Leiden, and we really collaborated in EU projects. So I want to give the message that we really were focused on collaborating with other research groups. Next slide. So our business model was fee for service. So we do research, and then you get the strains, and in some cases you have to pay licenses because we do unique things. Next. And so we wanted to collaborate with multiple partners, and of course that is tricky. You could say, well, I mean, partner A doesn't want his results to be shared with partner B if it's the same purpose. So we try to find solutions in that we would do the core technology, so we would do the fungal transformation, and the customers bring in their genes and do that. But again, I want to stress this was all based on collaboration. Next slide. So we didn't give exclusivity on the core technology, but because that would otherwise mean we can only give it to somebody once, but we gave access to the core technology to all the different partners. And of course, there has to be a fit. You have to see that there's also culturally, not only scientifically, but also the way you think should be similar, otherwise it doesn't work. And there, of course, to do the research, we need some financial commitment from the partners. Next slide. If you think about what is biotech in fungi, then there are three. At that time, so at that today, then it was mainly where fungi played a big role was in citric acid. So almost all citric acid produced by fungi. It's about antibiotics. It's also that is produced a lot by fungi, as penicillium by penicillium, and enzymes. So these were, at that time, multi-billion markets. So we said that this is enough to start this company. Next slide. And we saw promise in these fields to develop further. So in the pharma market, new antifungals, new antibiotics, renewable chemicals or other chemicals than citric acid, new enzymes, but also new proteins like animal-free proteins, so proteins derived from animals but not produced in animals, so that you could get rid of the cow and still have milk proteins. Next slide. And so this is the same slide as the one before, but this is the more fancy one. This is what you would produce to an American company. They like to these kind of AI-created pictures. So you see the same things, the organic acid, the pharma, the food, and the enzyme markets, they all have also promise for the future. So it's not that it's only fulfilling current needs, but we had the impression that there would be needs for the future. Next slide. And so how does a small company like Dutch DNA act? Then, of course, we had our experience. We had, and then with our partners, the customers that make the enzymes, they came in with the development of the application. They needed an enzyme for a certain application. So that's what they did. And then we together showcased that we could produce this protein. So that's in what is said tomorrow. And then the future was joint commercialization. And that, of course, is largely on the part of the partner. We don't produce the proteins ourselves. Next slide. And so, in a way, this is the same thing. So you have an area where we did most, so that's before the bar, and then in the second phase, when there's optimization, that is where the customer comes in most. But during the whole project, we really work together. Next slide. Next slide. Skip this because there are two areas, but that is something that comes in our lecture tomorrow about protein production, and next slide is about organic acid production, and I gave an online lecture on this topic. So these were the two topics we focused on. So I said fungal biotech, but even in that fungal biotech, we focused on only these two areas. So protein production and organic acid production. Next. So then what happened? In 2021, I already mentioned, Dutch DNA became part of Ginkgo. Next slide. And what I said already, Ginkgo, the slogan of Ginkgo is make fungal biotech easier to engineer. Next. You saw this. So the company had money enough to support us. Next. This is a recapitulating what we discussed this morning. So it's an end-to-end synthetic biology company. So we, as Steve Barrett, we want to do the whole thing from design to making the final strain and scaling up. And Ginkgo didn't have fungi, so that's why they acquired us. They wanted to have fungal technology. Next. Well, we can skip this. This was also in the afternoon. So yeah, next. Next. Next, we also had this morning. Yeah, so what was important with Ginkgo is that within Dutch DNA, we were not so focused on IP because we were mainly focused on doing the contract research. So we earned our money on doing contract research. Within Ginkgo, that is a bit different because Ginkgo, the way Ginkgo and maybe US companies collaborate is different. They're much more trying to protect themselves by IP. And so what we said is the background IP, so the IP that we already know before we start a project, we own that. And the foreground IP that's the IP that is produced in the collaboration. There we have to be able to also improve our own system. So Ginkgo wanted to keep both the background, that's logic, but also the foreground, Ginkgo wanted to own. That is a model that is, you can imagine that it's true because we gave a license to our customers, but still this was difficult to explain. Because the customer, in the situation of Dutch DNA, we gave the foreground to the customer. That's easy because then they own something. Here, the the customer doesn't own, they have a license, and that feels different. So you have to deal with it. That's another aspect. So collaboration is the one thing I want to focus on, but also how things are perceived by your customer. It can also be something that you have to be recognizing. Next slide. Next. So I mentioned we have these two systems in Ginkgo, but we brought in the filamentous fungi. Next slide. Yeah, we can skip it. So the PICA system is also a quite good system, but I don't want to go into those details. The fungal system next. Yeah. So there we had these two strains which have very different, very unique characteristics in viscosity. So that is where customers came to us for our strains, and we can use them for heterologous protein production. Next slide. So here you see some examples. I don't want to go into the details. The strain really performed very nicely in microplates, in shake flasks. It produces a lot of protein. You see that in the proteins in the green blocks. There are the proteins that we can produce in those backgrounds, and you see that it can be really very a significant amount of protein. Next slide. The one thing that we missed for fungi, I alluded to that in the morning, is that we were not able to do high throughput screens. But I said, I mean, the automation workflow is not really suitable for fungi. So then we had already some collaborations with a company in Switzerland that's called FGen. And they were able to grow fungi in small microbeads. And then that allowed us to do high throughput screens. So in 2022, Ginkgo decided to buy this company. So that is more the model for Ginkgo buying companies, while as a small company of Dutch name, we would have collaborated with them. Ginkgo didn't want to do this collaboration scheme. They preferred to have acquisitions. I mean, of course, it's easy because then you know that you own it and you don't have to worry about, say, using that the company used it for your competitors. But well, okay. So that happened. So they were then owned. Next slide gives a little bit about the procedure, but maybe we can skip it for the time being. What you can do in here, you see these beads. You can, in these small beads of alginate, you can grow fungi and you can do assays with them. And you can imagine that you can encapsulate one spore in a bead, so you can screen millions of individual beads. And that is how it's working. Next. And so I mentioned already at a certain point, then Ginkgo decided to change philosophy. So from being a CRO or some sort of CRO, being more a an equipment platform, so people can do their own projects. We don't. So our fungal system didn't fit in that system. So next slide. I mentioned this in this morning also. So I mean, we fit in this first research solution, not so much in the things on the right. So data points, automation, and reagents, that is not for fungal biotech. So next slide. And so that meant that we didn't fit so well anymore in the business model of Ginkgo. So although the technology is very valuable, it can happen that another decision is made to discontinue an activity, even if it's not about scientific soundness or whatever, but just that it doesn't fit anymore in the business model. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so this is what we discussed this morning. I mean, the automation became more complicated, more automation. And next slide. So what did this change mean for fungal biotech? It no longer was a strategic fit. So if you look at the left-hand side, fungal strain improvement approaches are not automation friendly. And so it was decided to discontinue both the fungal activities in the Netherlands and in Switzerland, in Basel. So both this microencapsulation and the fungal technology. And the thing that was left, and that is what I did the last 2 years, we had this unique strains. So this is an example of, let's say, flexibility. I mean, if you see that a certain route is closed, you have to think about, well, what could I do as an alternative? And then we came with this solution. We are now licensing the strains to companies that have their own research with it, and we also license it to another CRO. There's a small company in Slovenia. They can do this research also, that they can work with fungal strains, and we allow them to do research for third parties. So they are, in a way, they have a license to sub-license. And so that is for Ginkgo interesting, because it means that Ginkgo doesn't have to do the work and still gets revenues from licensing income. And it's for myself personally, it has the benefit that these strains are being used, because otherwise the risk would have been that they would have been on the shelf and nobody would ever use them. So we were able to get new opportunities. Next slide. So this meant that we could still make fungal biotech easy to engineer, but then the people have to do it themselves, or have to go to other CROs to do the next slide. I think that was it. Yeah. So this is my career path, and I think I hope I've showed you that it's a mix of say scientific research and academic research, but also reach out to companies. And what I also want to bring to you and put into the discussion is that some people say, oh, but this is applied science, as if this is less sound or less or of a lesser quality than academic research. But I would counter that in saying that if you do applied science, the science has to be as good as academic science, but there's something on top of that. It also has to be applied. It has to be useful. And that was in my career something that I really liked, that doing this research and seeing also that the results of the research end into the hands of our customers, ends into the companies, ends into the society. So that now there are enzymes produced here and there where I've contributed to the development of the strains. So of course that is different from an academic career. I'm sure you realize that, but it is also important to realize that I've noticed during my career that this fits to me. So it doesn't mean that it fits to everybody, and so there's no good or bad decision that you make, but you have to make decisions. And it's also not a good thing to make a decision because your neighbor made the same decision. Because if he jumps from a mountain, you don't have to jump after him. And if he swims in the river, you have to, I think that's also something you have to learn as a scientist. You have to be independent, but also flexible. If a route is clearly not working, you have to have the flexibility to do something else. And so that I also in my career had to do. What I also realized is that in my career, there are also parts of luck or of accidental things or surprises. And surprises, you could say, well, you never know when something comes up. That's true, but on the other hand, a surprise you also have to see. Because I think you can have a surprise that you see, but somebody else would overlook. So I think you should bring yourself into the picture as well. You should bring yourself and don't try not to do things that you do just because you think or just because other people say you have to do this. Because even after your PhD or even after your master, if you decide to go to become a teacher, that's all fine. I mean, it's something you have to. It has to fit to yourself, and you. I mean, it also has to do with. Well, of course, you have to earn your income, but if you have to earn your income with something you don't like, that's a hard job. So it should be something that that fits. And that's, I think, the main message is that you have to find that, and that's something I cannot do for you. You have to do it yourself, but you have to use other people to help you find your way, because sometimes other people see more clearly what you are good in. And the other message is, I think collaboration is always the way to go. I mean, if you're not able to collaborate, you have a hard job, because you always need other people or other people need you. And that's a give and take situation. But that's about my career. And what I said, it may not be typical, but so I'm now happy to take any question related to this or to something completely different. You can take your turn.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Okay, is there any question from the audience here? We have heard about the career, the career of the professor from the beginning until now. He becomes the professor in Leiden, and he also has a career in a fungal biotechnology company. And maybe, okay. Siapa dulu?
Okay, thank you very much for the insightful information, Professor. My name Jody Ashrib from Master Program of Food and Science Technology, and I'd like to ask about some slide in one point of slide that Ginkgo Bioworks IP philosophy states that you hold exclusivity over your strain. What happens, however, if the partner lacks the capable and sustainable facilities for culturing and cultivating the strains, and Ginkgo Bioworks handles those operations instead? So, what is the status of the IP in that scenario? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because for companies, it's important that they are free to be able to produce the protein they want to produce. I mean, they don't want to be limited by rights of a third party. If you give an exclusive license, then mostly in those licenses, it also includes that you can do the production, for example, at a facility of another partner. So that you don't limit, because the philosophy of Ginkgo was and still is, Ginkgo is not interested in making products. So we don't have a portfolio of products. We are a science company. And more recently, we are an automation company, which is not exactly the same. I think I explained that. The science company, I mean, this morning I think it was clear, the science company is the company that does partnership projects. The automation company is a company that delivers data. And that's different. But in the situation where we develop strains and we have shared IP, or we have IP and we license the IP, we want to be sure that our customers will be able to use the strains. But you see, and that sometimes is a cultural thing, that some customers just don't want this license model, because they think, yeah, but what happens if you change ownership? What happens? So they have a feeling of, well, why don't we just get it? And why don't you give us not a license but ownership to the strains? And Ginkgo, and that's also cultural. That's US cultural. Wants to keep this ownership and to be. Yeah, I don't actually know why that is. I mean, because if you give an exclusive license to somebody, then nobody else can get the same license. So then, for me, it would be as if you would just give ownership. Well, now in the autonomous lab, where we only provide data, then the data is owned by the customer. So that's a much simpler model. But you could run. I mean, the model with the ownership to the customer is a model that the new partner, so that's the company is called ACS Bio, that's in Slovenia. They are providing licensing to the customer, where the customer gets gets a license to use the strain. I mean, they don't own the strain, but they own the newly developed strain. So that is much more fitting to the industrial. Yeah, you could say maybe not needs, but to the industrial culture, and especially companies that are owned by families. So if you have companies that are corporate companies that are owned by their shareholders, they might be more willing to do this license model. But if you go to family-owned companies, they want to have ownership. That's just because they are thinking about 25 years ahead when their son or their daughter will be the owner. And so you in that sense, you have to be that flexibility. And that is something that Ginkgo, as a large company, cannot provide so much. So in a way, it fits to that automation is also not so flexible. It's the flexibility. So in my view, and it's a personal view, but in my view, Ginkgo is losing some of its flexibility by going into this automation. But yeah.
Is that all? Okay. Oh, silakan.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Hello, sir. My name is Irfan. I am from Master of Biotechnology, and I have one question for you. So in Ginkgo, it focuses mainly on aspergillus, right? And why? What is the reason between why it is focused on aspergillus? Why it is not focusing on also another strain like trichoderma? And maybe is there any plan to expand its focus like in bacteria maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that
Want to
question.
focus on fungi.
Of course, as a small company, so that's another thing. I mean, ambition, because it's about ambition, and I think ambition is also in your career path something important. We decided to focus on aspergillus because we said if we, for our own developments, that is, I mean, we did projects on other fungi at Dutch DNA, but at Ginkgo it was already quite soon that we only worked on aspergillus. If you want to develop a system that's quite costly, you have to develop the strains, you have to develop all the tools. And we said, well, if we have to do that for more than a single fungus, that is just something that we cannot afford. And especially for trichoderma, there are several other groups in Scandinavia, in VDT, in Finland, for example, in Germany, which work on trichoderma. And so but we found that there were very little, research, commercial research groups work on aspergillus, and there were also no aspergillus strains available for industry, except for those that are already in the big industries. But they were never licensed. I mean, a company like DSM or Novozymes, they don't license their strain. They keep it completely for themselves. So we found out that licensing Aspergillus niger was something that people would have interest in. And so that's why so our ambition was to do formal biotech, but we soon noticed that if we want to really be able to offer our customers the best for their euro, we have to focus again. So we focused on protein production and organic acid production, but in that field, we also immediately focused on only doing Aspergillus niger, both for organic acids and proteins as possible. It's just a matter of funding. I mean, we didn't have enough money to develop these other systems. And when you develop something, you want to do it good. And you have to know what your competition is. I mean, that's in a way that relates to in your situation. If you're doing work and you haven't looked in the literature properly, it could be that you're doing something that somebody else already did before, and then it's a waste of your time. And so that's what we did. We did a careful study in the literature, but also in the commercial literature, and found out that Aspergillus niger was a niche. There was need for Aspergillus niger, while trichoderma there were other suppliers. So and with bacteria and yeast, that's even more. There are many more suppliers of say P. capsuloris, for example, in ATSIP, where some of your colleagues have been in Austria. They have very good P. capsuloris strains, E. coli, you can buy kits, you can, so we said we focus on something that is difficult and that is not available yet. That also brings a risk, of course, that if you don't succeed, that you lose. But we try to have everything in place so that we have a little chance of happening.
Okay. Do you have another question for? Oh, another. Okay, please.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. So my name is Zara, and maybe different from Jody and Irfan questions. I would like to know about your suggestion and advice in career perspective. What your suggest or your advice for maybe some of us that just graduated for the master's degree, but we don't have any job experience like for a year. So what we have to do to emphasize our maybe our resume to get looked up by the industrial company for the international opportunity maybe, or is that we have to have a technical skill license or certifications?
Yes, very good question. Thank you. Because it comes back to what I said. So if you have your master degree, there is an opportunity to go for a job. There are jobs from people with a master degree in various places. If you want to make a scientific career, then of course a PhD is a good step. If your idea is that you want to eventually be working within industry, then also a PhD is a good thing, because many of these companies, they will ask a PhD. But if you would like to do more like a technician like a work, so really a lot of work in the lab and not too many meetings, not too many grants writing, then also technician job is a perfect job. I mean, but it is something you have to think about. And what is also something I want to say is that if you make a decision, but that's already happened in your case. I mean, if you, in all your cases, if you make a decision to do a certain project in your master time, that already limits yourself. That's the only way it should go. I mean, because then you go into a certain field, and this is your expertise. And with that expertise, you can present yourself for a PhD or for a job. And so it's important already before, so earlier on, to make a decision, and that's probably what you all did. You decided to go to agricultural technology or to whatever course you were following because you liked that, or you had maybe you had something in mind that you said, oh, and then I can save the world with microproteins, or I can whatever. It could be, or then I can earn lots of money because this is in both are, none of these are bad, but you had something in mind. So then the next step after, now that you have experienced what it is to do a master thesis, all the hard work you have to do, all the revisions, all the discussions, could be that you say, well, actually, I don't know if I like this, because this is, if you go do a PhD, it will be similar. I mean, you have more responsibilities, but it will be similar. If you don't like that, if you don't like to be in the lab, it could, I mean, it's all fine. It could be that you discover, well, the lab is not the place I want to be. I want to be more maybe a computer scientist, or I want to be a teacher, or whatever. Then it's fine to make that decision, but you have to think about the consequences. But also, I mean, it's a pity if you do a job just for the money. It's a pity if you do a job that you don't like, but you it's prestigious or whatever. I mean, so I think if you can do something that you like to do, that's because that's a blessing. I mean, not everybody can choose that. I also realize that. So sometimes you have to do something that is, but every job, of course, has things that you don't like. I mean, there are always things that in every job, there's something And well, I mean, maybe one of the maybe Dika or Andy, you could say something about what you experienced as a PhD. What were your major issues that you come across, and what is the what, why did you survive? Dika, can you say something about that?
Andy, please.
Andy?
You can talk. It's a fresh graduated PhD.
That's true. That's the first.
Okay. No, yeah, maybe if you don't know me, so my name is Andika. I'm a lecturer at the Department of Food and Agricultural Product Technology that just currently graduated from University of Copenhagen as a PhD student. So it's freshly graduated. But yeah, it's a really tough challenge, I would say, and it's you have to really balance between lab work and then for me we also have to teach, and then we also have to supervise students. We have to also prepare for international conferences. You have to disseminate your research in every setting, not only in the university level but also in an international level. So it demands quite a lot, and it's really hard. It's hard and a nice balance for me to be able to collaborate with other people that I'm not usually see, for example. And also, yeah, of course, we have to take some courses. And yeah, and if you think that you are suitable in that environment with a lot of different cultures and different pressures, I would say, then you should try to go for it. And then also in terms of the what next, it's not only of becoming a lecturer. You can also be in industry. There are plenty of industries in for me in Denmark that requires PhD. Also postdocs even. That's is a bigger requirement. So don't worry, and then don't think that you are in Indonesia and then only think that your scope is in Indonesia. But you have to think as a global citizen where you are also compatible in different countries. So yeah, that's the.
And can you say something about what is the difference? So, because you did your master here,
Yes, I did.
what is the difference in how you perceive supervision from your supervisor in during the master phase and during the PhD phase? Can you say something about that? So how did you experience that?
Yeah, for me it was really quite different in terms of the how. For me, I have a lot of individual independency while I'm in PhD students compared with what I did in my master. Because in PhD you can be yeah, you can be as creative as you want, and if it doesn't work, then you have to do another type of design of experiment, for example, or analysis. And then, yeah, the supervision, I think it's a bit harder and you have to think rigorously. But yeah, other than that, I think.
And maybe you can say what is the most stressful period in your PhD? I mean, David, I mean, I don't know whether you're typical or not, but of course, in your PhD, you have research, you have teaching, you have writing,
Yeah.
you have presenting your data, and you have to think about your next step.
Yes.
If you give your personal experience there, what was the hardest part for you?
For me, I think because I feel like my English was not really good in terms of how I write my report and also writing journals. So that was the most challenging thing for me. Yeah, I also think that everyone has the different beginning in terms of their English. I know that for sure, but for me that's the most challenging part. Even though I have been writing a lot of not a lot, quite a few journal articles, but still, it's really challenging.
And what is the thing that you're most proud of?
Ooh, my most proud of. Actually, just finishing the PhD itself is it's a big stuff because in Denmark it used to be the normal was 3 years, but I completed it in 4 years due to some challenges, a lot of challenges, and then those extension period itself was quite challenging for me because I had to pivot my trajectory in some way. So that was a bit hard.
And,
Yeah.
and maybe, I mean, you are already 2 years later, let's say.
Yes,
I mean,
RD.
if you look back to your career path, could you say something? I mean, because I mean, I give a perspective of a 40 years career. You give a perspective of a PhD career. You a PhD career plus, and so could you say something of
It's hard to recall everything because PhD has erased all. No. Yeah, thank you for the time. But I finished my PhD in March last year, Prof. And I still remember some challenges like what Mr. Andika said, that we have to divide our time to some activities. But I think my part is more relaxed than you because in Austria, I think professor always asks me to be balanced. You have to balance in your time. I mean, please care of your social life. Not always in the lab, because every time when I took my overtime on Saturday, Prof, then professor said to me, then when will you get a vacation? Please get out the lab and get vacation, because yeah, maybe for the Asian people, I'm sorry, I'm not discriminative, but sometimes the Asian people they don't want to get vacation, but they just try to collect the data in the lab, and yeah, that is what they do. And after that, I just get the warning from the professor, please be balanced in your life. And yeah, your life is not as small as that. So I think the most important thing that I got from my PhD is balanced life, because my professor always taught to me that we have to have a good social life and also be happy in our daily life, Prof.
Yeah, I think that's also good that you say that, because you see that, for example, I noticed that in the US, that in the United States, there's also a lot of Asiatic people from China, and that these people, they really suffer from not being encouraged to take a social life, because the only surroundings they have is their own small circle of friends, and they work is what they do. And I think it's I mean, you had a good professor, I mean, that he said that, because work is not the only thing in life, and that is something. So if of course, I mean, it doesn't mean you get lazy, because you probably get more efficient. You avoid to work in the weekends, and then you plan differently. So that I think is perfect. I mean, if you would have to say to the master students, who would be thinking of a PhD of you? So can you raise hands of if you think about PhD or not?
Yeah, I will continue to PhD.
You also, and can you give a reason? Can you do you have a story in mind for yourself?
Express your life.
Oh, well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, one of the reasons to why I want to continue with a PhD is that mainly I'm looking at venturing into academia as my career, and of which that is one of the things that that is actually pushing me forward to pursue a PhD. Yeah.
And is your idea to go back to Uganda, or
Yeah.
you want to stay here?
No, after my my master's degree, I'll have to go back to Uganda for a time. Maybe when scholarships open last year, then I can apply again for a PhD. Yeah.
And so the those of you that didn't raise your hand yet, who is undecided, who doesn't know yet? And who has other, so who has another career path in mind after his master? So can anybody of you say, so if you're not thinking about a PhD career, what are your thoughts?
What's the idea other than PhD career? This man is going to continue the master degree in Belgium, Prof, this August.
Yeah, actually, my name is Helmi Tama Hidayat Rahman. You can call me Helmi. And right now, I'm still thinking because I haven't started my master degree. I'm start in September in last year. So, but for my career, right now I'm still thinking to have continue my education to PhD because. From many my senior from my senior stories, they told me that in master degree you don't, like Mr. Andika told before, you don't have the creativity. You have to follow your supervisor's rule like that. So I think I'm still want to explore in many things in my academic journey. And for my future plan, maybe I don't want to be a lecturer yet, but I'm still want to know. I want to try to be a postdoctoral degree, like some kind of like that. So I want to have more experience in laboratory or many projects that are related to my education. Maybe it's like that.
And I don't know, but how would you go to any of the professors or any of the lecturers here and discuss this with them, or are you encouraged to do that? So does everybody have discussions with your supervisors on, say, of course you have discussions on your projects. So if you do a master degree, then you have, like Zara, she will discuss with Andika about progress, but do you also have discussions about your future plans and if your supervisor thinks you're suitable? Could you say something about that, Andika? So the students that you supervise, do you also help them to make decisions on their career? Is that something that is in the curriculum?
Dr. Andika, please.
Yeah, thank you. As a supervisor, we can always help students in the discussion in any part related to the career as well, and also the research, and if they want it, but we don't have to. I mean, if
So
they,
it's not a thing in the curriculum.
no, actually not in the curriculum. It is not mandatory that we have to, as a lecturer or as a supervisor, we have to like a direct or like to give option or give suggestion or give path to the student for their career.
And
but we can. But it is
yeah.
yeah.
And what happens? Maybe it's a bit of a difficult question, but what happens if you have the impression as a supervisor, well, my student is lacking skills, or the student thinks, well, my supervisor is not the right supervisor. In those kind of situations, how is that resolved? Is there a procedure for that? Let's say you have a student that doesn't perform well, or the student thinks my supervisor is not performing well. Is there a system to address it? So could you go up one step and go to one of the professors, or how does that work?
Yeah, we can always it's kind of ask for advice to the professor, or even we can also go to someone expert, yeah, to resolve or to discuss with. it's always open.
Maybe I don't know if there's other questions on this topic of career.
Please.
Well, then maybe we go to another topic, which is important in your whole life. It will be as a scientist already now in your master phase. Some of the work you did you are doing in your master phase may be publishable. Maybe could somebody say something about that? I mean, how difficult that is for you to do? I mean, how you're also if you think about publishing, is that something of climbing the Merapi mountain and then find out there's a hole in the middle, or is it something that you easily would do, or is it something that would really be useful to your career? Anybody? Did any of the master students in Thara went, but I know that her project, of course, results in something that is potentially publishable, but there needs to be some work done. Is that with any of your work also for when you already past your master or when you are still in the master phase? Is that something that is important for you to do that, to get experience there? Is that something you like? Or is it something also for people that did their PhD? Is it something you actually dislike, but you have to do it? Could somebody say something about that?
Hello?
Because I know from experience, and I think Dika will also know from experience, that publishing is a long thing. I mean, it's not something that you can do overnight. It takes you a lot of time and effort and frustration also. So maybe maybe you can say something. You've published also work. For you, I mean, just to tell something about to the master students about what publishing means and what is nice about it, what is difficult about it.
Okay. Tika wants it first.
Focusing our research, yeah, it's also a bit challenging sometimes. So we besides that, we need to create the research that we did. We need to make like to match what publisher that fits to our research. That's one thing. But then second, something that is also more challenging is in the review process. Yeah, sometimes it is very exhausted, and also sometimes it is. You can feel so relieved when you are done with the rebuttal session. Yeah, because there are several reviewers, but all of them have the same, because not all of them have the same mindset or the same perspective in our research. But we need to answer their questions as wise as possible or as correct as possible, but try not to very arguing things if we feel that it's something that we can resolve. Yeah, for me, that's something that is very challenging, is the review process, because sometimes you get rejected, but most of the time it's very relieved when you get that it's accepted. Yeah.
And maybe because of course I was involved in much of what Dika was doing. It's sometimes also interesting that we had that in one case, that based on what the reviewers asked us, we discovered actually that we didn't make a mistake, but that if we look at our data a bit differently, it resolved issues. I mean, so that is also something else. I mean, when you discuss something with your colleagues also, because the review process is very late. I mean, that's when you've already written the paper and you have already made up your mind. But in your thesis time, also as a master student, sometimes you find results that are, you don't understand why you get the results. And at first you think, oh, this is a mistake, I have to do it again. And then you do it again and you find the same result. And then sometimes it's difficult to step out of your line of thinking. And then it's often helpful if you, well, I mean, it could be that your supervisor is in the same line of review and also doesn't see the problem, but then it can be useful to go to somebody else which is not doing and you say, well, we found this and that, and then somebody else could, with a completely different mindset, say, all of a sudden give you, so he or she will probably not be able to resolve the problem, but by giving somebody else giving his mindset, it might give you a new perspective and say, hey, oh, then I should interpret this differently than how I was thinking all the time. And so that's again something about flexibility, because I think the themes that we addressed are collaboration and flexibility. Those are, and I heard somebody saying also you have to have pleasure in work. Well, those three things, but flexibility means that you have to also be able to give up certain positions that you've taken and make a step aside. Collaboration means that you also have to allow the other person to benefit from what you're doing together, and giving recognition. I mean, if somebody helped you with something to do, that you recognize that of course, in collaboration, you always, you always give away something. But what is, for example, what is very, for me, striking that it happens, but in English, so thesis in the UK, you sometimes see a page where it says, almost it says, I've reached these results all by myself, without collaborating with anybody, because you have to show that your thesis is really unique for yourself. And then I find that a bit strange, because I think a thesis is much better if you could say, I've collaborated with this and that persons. I mean, people probably in Denmark, only would be here, would know that. In Denmark, there is a page where you have to say, where the other people that are in your publication have to sign that they contributed to it. That's good, but I mean, it's strange that you would be disencouraged to collaborate. I think you should be encouraged to collaborate, and of course, it cannot be one side only. It cannot be that you have to do something for somebody else all the time, and you never get something back. But collaboration brings you. I mean, one-on-one. It's more than one-on-one. It's actually. Then one and one can become three, because you have different experiences. And so I think that's another thing in your research also, to not think that the world is your own, that your master thesis is the whole world. Of course, it takes a lot of time for you and it takes a lot of effort, but there's life beyond that. But also in the thesis itself, there is life broader than only your own expertise and your own activities. You can have other people contribute in a way they might not even recognize so much, but you have benefited, and that's always good to think about that, because that means the other way around also. If you can provide support to somebody else's work, if somebody asks you, well, can you read my thesis because I have the feeling I miss a point, but can you read it? Yeah, that's perfectly fine, because then the other person helps you to discover what you couldn't discover by yourself. And so collaboration is really very important. Okay, any other topics?
Sorry, regarding the reviewer process in the publishing of the journal, maybe it was in my second paper during my PhD. I got maybe around 160 points of reviews, and we identified that 100 of 160 are generated with AI, and I think we can identify because the pattern of the sentence is always the same, and sometimes those points are contradictory between the other points. So I mean, what should we respond to the review like that? I mean, sometimes it's harsh, sometimes it's AI things, sometimes it's
Yeah.
bad.
It's complicated, of course, because you now see that also people are writing publications with AI. I mean, they just and well, I mean, for myself, I think I'm too old to be able to support that, because then the process. I mean, writing is also a creative process, because you have the data, but the data themselves do not speak. The data don't speak. You have to make them speak, and so. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see the point that with AI you may be able to find gaps in a paper and find issues, but I mean then to bring it up as 160 lines of questioning, so it seems to be a bit overdue. I mean, I would think that if you use AI as a reviewer, I would always scrutinize what I get out and then only give the major points or something like that. I don't know if that is. I don't remember if that's the case, but I think there are journals that do not allow reviews by AI. So they already exclude that. So a reviewer should give a review by just by human and not by AI. Because AI might be incorrect, and it might be biased. So, but I don't know. I mean, I have no experience, because what I said, I mean, the last 5 years, I've published pretty well. Most of it is the work that Dika was doing, and from Ginkgo, Ginkgo has no publishing culture. There are hardly any papers from Ginkgo work, and that's due to this IP strategy. I mean, they don't want to share if they don't have to, which is sometimes a pity, because at the time of Dutch DNA, many of our clients came to us because we have published data. So based on the publications, they said, "Oh, this is interesting. I want to know more about it. Can you tell more?" And then you can tell more, and then you can start talking about a project. But that's not how Ginkgo worked. So in that sense, I mean, some people say, "Oh, don't you pity that you are now leaving Ginkgo?" And I said, "No, I think it's a logic step for me." But again, it's a bit of a step. You leave something behind, and that was also when we decided to sell the DNA. You of course lose control. You lose ownership. So we had to. We knew that we had to fit into the culture of Ginkgo, and we knew that what happened, that they had no longer interest in what we're doing, that could happen. And so and that's also with I don't know how often that happens, but also with when you start your master thesis, if you start the work doing your master internship, at a certain point, of course, it can be that the basic idea behind what you're going to do turns out to be wrong or turns out to be different. Yeah, that's not nice, because it means that you have worked for a couple of months and chased the wrong horse. But on the other hand, you have to be you also learn a lot of failures. If everything goes as planned, then. But luckily, science is not like that. I mean, science it always is more difficult than you think. So, but it's helpful. Failures help you. So that's why I'm so pleased that also here, but also in Leiden, there's a lot of internships even in the bachelor phase and in the master phase, because then you learn what it is to be a scientist. You learn that failure is. I think it's maybe a different percentage, but I think it's more likely that 80% fails than that 80% succeeds. So you have to be able to cope with that. It's not like you have the light switch and you put it on and off, on and off. That's not how science works. Science works it's more complicated. So sometimes it's when you put the switch, it's okay, and sometimes it doesn't work. So and you have to be able to cope with it. If you are very strict, I mean, so people that have a very strict way of thinking, they can have complications with doing science because they're not up to failure. On the other hand, people that are very well organized, they can do an experiment. They can do maybe with one experiment, they can do more than what somebody that's not so well organized has to do with 10 experiments. So it depends on how you are yourself, how this fits to doing research. And that is, yeah, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, it's that you have to find out yourself. I can help, and then people can help you with that, can help you reflect, but eventually you have to make the decisions yourself. And so if you say, well, I want to do the PhD, that's a perfect starting point, and then, but also if it would fail, let's say it fails, then then it doesn't mean that that you need to be unhappy. No, could be that you just found a better solution for your work, and because being a PhD or being a professor is not better than being a technician or being a master in science in as a lecturer or whatever. There's no hierarchy. It has to fit to yourself.
Okay, Prof. Maybe one more last question. Judy, another question, please. Sudah.
Okay, actually, I have another question. It's about the same PhD. Usually, in the past couple of months or years, actually, I've been hearing these stories, more especially from students from Europe, because I have friends who are studying from Europe, saying that PhD is quite very complex, and it's really kind of hard to finish on time. So I'm asking, what makes it complex? And if at all in way it's complex, what are the strategies that can be taken to make sure that someone finishes on time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the right person to ask that question because, or to answer that question because, but I told you, I did my PhD more or less as a side project. I had my job at TNO, and in the meantime, I was publishing. And at a certain point, we had 4 or 5 publications, and then we could go to the committee and say, well, we have these publications, and they put their stamp on it, and that was my thesis. So I didn't do a real PhD study where I had to finish in 4 years. There was no deadline. So somebody else who had the deadline maybe be better to answer this, because it's a genuine question. It's very important.
Yeah, complex. Okay, thank you. Maybe another question, please. I think that's all, Prof. No more question for this afternoon session.
Yeah, maybe what I can say, if people here in the audience would want to reach out to me on topics that you've heard or maybe context. I mean, for example, what I mentioned about the internships at Ginkgo, internships at Leiden, we will have later on Thursday, we'll have a meeting with also the professor in whose group I am part of, Arthur Ram. And we will have discussions on further collaborations with Indonesia, with UGM in particular, of course. I mean, if you have ideas for yourself and say, well, I would really like to do this or that, you can try and find your own way. That's perfectly fine. You can also ask people here to help you. I mean, it's nice to know that lots of the staff have experience in Europe, so they can also tell you what is good about that and what is complicated about that, because the culture is different. I mean, you have to realize it. And maybe I don't know if that's the case, but do you feel that the culture here is different from Uganda? And can you say something about what maybe as a last thing, what is nice about this culture here in Indonesia and what is complicated for you?
Well, if
So
it,
start with what is complicated, then you end nice.
yeah, I'll try to compare the two countries. Yeah, well, in academia, I think here it's quite more friendly, given that professors and lecturers here are quite more accessible and actually more friendly.
Here.
Yeah, here as compared to way back in my country. Yeah, that's the part of academia. Yeah.
And what I found in the couple of days I'm here now, difficult to, or no, not difficult, but different from how I experienced it in the Netherlands, is that people are so friendly. And is that the same for you, that they try to help you and try to be friendly, or is there also, do you also feel a distance?
Yeah, actually here they are quite friendly and kind, and actually that's the very same thing that I've been actually pointing out. Being more approachable, of course, to me, I understand it in that perspective, being friendly, being kind, being approachable, and which is something I can use to define people here.
And when it's maybe a bit personal, but when you are in a group of students, do they tend to speak Bahasa or do they tend to speak English?
Well,
Can you raise your hand and say,
it depends on the students that I'm with. For example, if because of course their levels of English are different. Yeah, but in most cases, it's more comfortable speaking in Bahasa because if we are a large group of people, it feels like more a language that more everyone understands better. Yeah.
Because, I mean, it may be a silly question, but I noticed that your friend from Ethiopia, you were sitting together. Is that because it's more difficult to mingle with the Indonesian, or is it?
No, actually, it's not difficult. It's so easy. I don't know. It just happened by coincidence,
Okay,
and then that's why actually it was in the morning like that, and then in this session
Okay,
it's a
then it was a
different
coincidence.
sitting arrangement.
Because I notice, of course, when I walk on Malioboro Street, that people immediately see that I'm not Indonesian. With you, they also immediately see that you're not Indonesian.
Yeah, sure. They easily notice. They easily notice, of course, that I'm not an Indonesian. But the best of it all is that they are quite friendly people. Yeah, they'll come to you, greet you, show kindness, and to you. So you will really feel like you're not out of place, but instead you feel like, yeah, you're part of them. Yeah. Given the welcoming souls the welcoming kindness that they offer to you. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much for your openness and for your input. I hope this was useful for you to have such a bit organized discussion. I mean, for me, it was also a bit the first time I do this, but I thought it would be useful just to get some views.
Okay.